Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker, and we have got a fun show for you today. I want to start with my monologue, and it's been interesting because I've just loved this process and workflow of using LinkedIn, conversations that I start on LinkedIn to decide what I'm going to talk about on the show. And I've posted some things that I thought were going to generate a lot of discussion and didn't generate any discussion. And then I've also posted some things that I thought weren't going to be terribly interesting to the industry, and they've kind of gone crazy. And this is one that I thought was kind of right down the middle. Like I thought it might be interesting to some people, but I was not prepared for just how interesting the people in the industry would think it is. So I thought it was worth talking about as a monologue here. And I launched a newsletter sharing the fact that the state of Tennessee launched a program called Yeah, It's Real. And it's a photo certification program that can actually tell you if there's any AI enhancements in an image so that visitors can actually go check an image and see if the thing that they are wanting to go visit in Tennessee is actually a thing or if it's just AI, right? And I think it's an interesting program because if you look at across the board in just like consumer behavior today, AI is becoming a more and more trusted partner to every individual as a source of truth, right? My daughter goes straight to ChatGPT now, and she's 15 years old, whereas 3 years ago, she probably would have Googled things. And that we're seeing so much more that AI is becoming a source of truth. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not necessarily going to comment on that today because that's not really the purpose of the monologue. But consumer behavior wise, this is absolutely where things are going. And when you look at that, there's so much trust being built with the different platforms as far as consumer behavior goes. The one place where that trust does not seem to be continuing is in imagery, because when it comes to travel, authenticity is so important to whether or not somebody is going to book a trip and visit a destination. And if we can't trust that the imagery that we're seeing in ads is an actual place, is an actual representation of the destination, we're going to start questioning whether or not we want to book a trip there because we don't even know if what we're seeing is real. And that's why when Tennessee launched this program of, you have a place where you can go see, are these images real and does this really exist in the state of Tennessee? Kind of crazy that we have to launch a program like that, but I think it's a brilliant move by the state of Tennessee to build something like this. For one, it's an attention getter. And we all know that attention is the first step in building a relationship with a consumer. If you don't have their attention, they don't care about you. And then it's a trust engine, because if you're getting that as a source of truth, saying, yes, this is a real image and it represents the state of Tennessee, well, now we're building trust with our audience. So if you think about the state DMO and what they're doing there, they're getting attention through this program and they're using that attention to generate trust with the state and build a more authentic visitor experience. I think this is a really fascinating strategy, and I love what Tennessee has done. Now, the reason it generated a lot of commentary on my LinkedIn, there's a few different components of the discussion that were happening. Number one, a lot of photographers jumped in and said, yes, we want photography to be real. Now, I'm going to be the first to say, I believe there's some self-preservation there, right? Like the photographers, of course, are going to jump on and say that we need to keep photography real, right? And so while I do think they have inherent motives to that, I think they're right. I think photography, especially when we're representing what's in a destination, should be real. That being said, years ago, my team was building an image for the 5 different national parks here in Utah, and they superimposed physical components of each national park into one image. And I do think that there's a scenario, and that was before AI and everything. So the question is, would that have technically been a violation of the program? Is that Is that an inauthentic thing because we're just trying to represent the 5 national parks in one image? So I think there's some kind of logistical questions that this brings up, like what's okay and what's not. And my friend Tony Carney, who's done a lot of work on AI and tourism and the connection between the two things here, he brought up, he said, well, hold on, we've been retouching and editing photography, color correcting for a long time. So where's the line? Like, how do we know if we're doing something that we shouldn't be doing with AI? These LLMs came out in 2022, but I mean, we've been editing photos using a version of artificial intelligence for a very long time. And even the photographers who jumped in on the comment section and said, hey, we need to keep photography real. Well, wait a second, you color correct and retouch your photos as well. So I think the conversation of where is the line between an AI influenced photo and an AI generated photo, I think that's an interesting conversation to watch. And I saw it unfold on my LinkedIn post. My opinion is I think there's a big difference between enhancing a photo and fabricating a photo with AI. And I think AI is absolutely appropriate for us to leverage for a variety of different reasons because it opens up the opportunity for creativity if you're using AI to enhance a photo in some way. If you're fabricating the photo with AI and saying this is a direct representation of our destination using that photo, then of course, I think that's a kind of a breaking of the trust that you have with the audience. And so it's a great campaign by the state of Tennessee. Congrats to them for putting this together. I think it's a really unique idea. I think it's an attention-getting idea. And I think it builds trust with their audience, which is essentially the purpose of a DMO, to get attention, inspire trust, and then leverage that trust to inspire action and visitation to the destination. I think they are delivering on their purpose very well with this campaign. So with that, I want to bring in Colin Norman. And Colin is the executive director of Visit Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. Colin, what do you think of this whole discussion about leveraging AI with photography?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and thanks for coming to me with that one because I've been doing a lot of photography here lately for my DMO. I think it's an interesting discussion. Yeah, we have been retouching, right? We have been editing photos for years, but I think it's about capturing that real emotion, right? It's about capturing that real moment. We do tricks also within photography, right? Black and white or a slow shutter speed or something like those lines, which tells that story, tells that part of that in that image. But it's still a real image, and it's still something that actually happened. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, I was shooting a lot for the local county fair, and we ended up posting tons of these photos that I was taking on our Facebook page and our social media, and exploded. We didn't do any money behind that, and we got like 500,000 views over the course of a week, which was for us was pretty cool. So, and it was all because we were capturing real content, real people having fun in Clearfield County. So, and I think people were just excited to see that.
I love that. So tell us, I mean, you mentioned photography, right? But tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to Clearfield County, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, well, it was probably an Indeed posting or a posting on Tourism IQ is where I probably found it. But I'm born and raised in Smithfield, Virginia, the ham capital of the world. And nice. I have been trying to get back into the destination marketing world for eons. I kind of worked all the way through college and high school doing that sort of stuff and working in museums and working as an event coordinator for a number of years and a brand manager for a little while for a food company that shall remain nameless down there. But anyway, I had a good fun time with all of it, but it was never really my thing. And I've always just enjoyed the destination marketing aspect. And so I threw a wider net and ended up here in Pennsylvania. So
awesome. Now, where did photography come into play? Were you, for the food company, taking pictures of the hams for the website, or what's the?
No, I confess it's been more of a hobby here and there, but it's strange how those hobbies will turn into job duties after a while when people figure out you know what you're doing. So you got to be careful with that. But no, I just it was a thing. I never really did any photography for the food company or anything of that nature. I did do a little bit for like the museum I used to work for, and you know, a couple of the events here and there, just snapping a couple of shots here and there. But it's become more of a thing since coming in here into this DMO and sort of wearing a lot of different hats. You know, being the content creator, being the you know, just running everything here it's kind of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess first thing that I want to cover is you mentioned that you may have found the job on Tourism IQ. Indeed, you can't remember. That was an unpaid reference there, right? Like the fact
Unpaid.
that
I was not paid.
Yeah.
I was definitely not paid to say it. But I think a lot of this conversation we might be having today stems from a lot of the job postings that I was able to find through to tourism. You know, my Tourism IQ. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. So for anybody that's listening, there are hundreds, I think, of job listings in the destination marketing space on Tourism IQ. And so if you're looking, that might be a great place to start. Or if you're looking to post a job, there's guys like Colin out there looking for gigs that you might be able to find. I do think it would be helpful for us. You're now the executive director of Visit Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. I want to understand, what is Visit Clearfield County as a destination? Give us the 30,000-foot profile of Clearfield County.
Yeah. Well, we just went through a whole rebranding campaign. So this is all sort of new sort of stuff. We used to be this halfway to everywhere because we're located right on I-80 out here in Pennsylvania, which kind of runs right through the middle of the state. And we're kind of right out here in the middle of the state. But now we are the something wild is waiting out here in Clearfield County. So, but we're that destination that's sort of the gateway to the Pennsylvania wilds for somebody who's, you know, 2 to 4 hours away, which is mostly going to be like, you know, Washington, D.C. or Pittsburgh or Philly or some of those locations. You know, if they want to get away to a location where they can lose a little cell service, right? And they can get out and they can experience nature, but they still want to go and enjoy a place that's got a nice beer or a nice dinner, or they want to experience a dinosaur park, or they want to have an 8-pound hamburger for dinner. Something wild is waiting here for you in Clearfield County.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
Did you say an 8-pound hamburger, Colin?
I did. I said an 8-pound hamburger. We've got Denny's Beer Barrel Pub here. He's been featured on the Food Network a few times. But he's you can. I think he goes as much as like 25 pounds, but you can split that between 2 people. So
wow, an 8-pound hamburger. That just sounds like death that you pay for.
Yeah. We're having a good time. So.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, so something wild is waiting is kind of the description of Clearfield County. What was that rebranding process like?
Well, it was fast. You know, I started October of last year, and I think we're filming this, you know, early August of 26. And we hired on a marketing agency and helped us with collecting the data, going through the whole process. And by May, we had approved this new branding. And that was, you know, conducting interviews, conducting poll fish surveys, you know, and really asking the question, what do people care about in Clearfield County? You know, what is it that excites them to come here? Or what do they know about it? Or what do they not know about it? And I think actually we found through that rebranding process, there was a lot of like, people just didn't know about it out here. So I think that just goes to all the old branding, all the old marketing strategies and tactics were clearly just not working very well for us. So it was time for an update.
So Colin, it sounds like you got into the destination, you got right to work. The reason we decided to have this conversation actually has to do with before you got hired at Clearfield County. And when you and I met, I really appreciated you reaching out because you hit me up on LinkedIn and you said, hey, I've been leveraging Tourism IQ to look for a job. I've had some interesting experiences, but what I'm finding is that the hiring process in the destination marketing space is broken. And I thought that was an interesting comment because I think we as destination marketing professionals have been focused so much on promoting the destination, on protecting our funding, on dealing with stakeholders. We have so much on our plates that one of the simple workflows that is very consistent is that, especially with how many people move from one place to the other in the industry, hiring is an important component of what we do. And it sounds like we've maybe lost focus a little bit on the hiring side. So, Colin, I'd love for you to, and of course, without naming names, because I don't think anybody needs to be, directly called out or attacked. But at the same time, it's good for people to hear what your experience was like, so that if any of the processes that you're going to describe are happening in a destination, we need to get them fixed. So I'd love to have you maybe start there with what was your overall experience like as you were trying to find a job in our space?
Yeah, it's been a little bit all over the place, and and again, I also want to be clear. Like, I'm not here to name and shame anybody, right? I'm very happy with where I've landed and the things I'm getting to work on. Like, totally rebranding, total new website, new welcome center that we're building, and new visitor guide with most of my own photography in it. Those are all cool things that I would not have gotten to do at any of these other locations. But yeah, I think going through some of these interviews, there were just some common threads of like, what's so weird about it is when we're doing a marketing campaign, right? Like, we read the data, we know what we're going after, we have a target audience, like we know where we're going to market, like we know all those sorts of things. But for whatever reason, when it came to the hiring process, it just seemed like we lost all of those skills, even though they're very transferable. Even if, going back to some of your conversation, you did an episode recently on like the RFP process being broken and destinations being deserving better. I think if you had just changed procurement to HR and hiring process, to RFP, it would have been the same conversation almost in some ways.
Oh, draw that line. Tell me, why is that close to the same conversation?
Well, because I think, clearly everybody here has got some rules and regulations that they have to follow, right? From an HR perspective. Maybe there's a county government rules, maybe there's state laws that they have to follow, union regulations, and this, that, and the other. So I think that there's some hampering there, and that we need to do better jobs of executives or staff, getting with those HR teams, getting with those folks who don't work in our office on a day-to-day basis and don't understand exactly what it is we're looking for. And then try to streamline that process as much as possible from like a bureaucratic, issue there.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so you feel like the same issues we find in procurement and the RFP process, you could compare that to a job posting and the interview process. And I think you're right. Like, if we're going through the process of trying to hire a partner and we're not great at that, we probably have the same problems when trying to hire an employee. So let's go through your experience. I think that would be an interesting. Just tell the story of what the process was like.
Yeah, I think the one where I reached out where I was like, dude, we got to talk about this, right? And there was this interview I went on. It was probably a year or two ago at this point, and I was interviewed for an executive level role, and I ended up going through, I think it was 4 interviews, right, which included an in-person component to one of those interviews. And I think the whole process from like rejection to, from application to rejection, I think was like 4 or 5 months. And I think for the DMO, it was even longer because like they had to have that posting up for like, 90 days or something because of their regulations. Right. And that first interview I think I went through was a Zoom panel. It had like 4 people on it. That was like an hour. The second one, it was the in-person one where I spent a couple days up there and met with about 6 people. And I had to do this whole song and dance presentation to it, that I had to work on for a few weeks ahead of time. Right. And then there was a third one that included like over 20 some people were on this Zoom call. I'm not kidding you, over 20 some people. And they were all just like lobbing questions left and right. Right. And then there was a final one-on-one. And I think during that process, I was asked for a start date. I was asked, what do they think of their budget? Like they showed me their budget. Right. And I was shown around their facility. Like I was like, this, like I'm the guy. Right. And then I wasn't, and I was rejected by an email. And they sort of refused to have a follow-up call and sort of discuss any of that feedback or my interview performance or what I could have done differently or better. So it's just kind of weird of experience, if you ask me, to go through all that and just rejected by an email.
Well, and that was one destination. You interviewed with multiple destinations in the process. It sounds like this one, if I was to infer here, may have been the most egregious because you had so many steps. You were kind of walked pretty far down the path, it feels like.
Yeah.
And 20 people on a Zoom call, I don't care what you're interviewing for, that's excessive, I would say. But at the same time, I know that DMOs have a lot of stakeholders and boards, and
They do.
This is, as an industry, the most decision-making by committee industry that I've ever experienced. And so I can kind of see what led to that Zoom call, right, of 20 people. Sure. Was that the only destination that you had that type of an experience with, or are we talking that's just a microcosm of the overall experience that you had? Okay, 2026 has already been a whirlwind of travel for me. I've had the opportunity to speak at several conferences. I'm getting up early in the morning to go speak at another conference. It has been an incredible ride, and I'm really grateful to all the conferences that have had me come speak. The second half of the year, as of right now, I've got a few speaking openings, and if you or your event, whether it's a governor's conference or you're an association, if you're looking for a speaker to come talk about the issues that are facing our industry today, I'm confident I can come in and give your attendees a great experience. So if you'd like me to speak at your conference, my email is adam@thebrandrevolt.com. Hit me up and I'll see if there's a place in my schedule to be able to attend your conference and provide value to your attendees.
Yeah, I think that's a really good example of it. And, I think in that case, there was just way too many chefs in the kitchen, right? Somebody didn't get the early memo. I mean, who asks somebody for a start date and then doesn't go forward, right? Somebody didn't understand the goal at the end of that. But I think there's other ones, and I think this is all about like resource management and time and effort that we're all talking about here. We opened up this thing about like how we're dealing with all these stakeholders and managing all these people and all these things that we have to deal with. Why are we grinding gears when it comes to this hiring process? One of the ones I talked to, they wanted as a start, right? The first opening round of this interview, no phone call, no anything. They wanted me to do a 2-hour presentation to their county administrators or commissioners or whoever it was. And go through this whole rigmarole, and that was the start of our relationship. I don't even know these people. I don't know. They just know my resume, and it just seems like what a time waster compared to, there's another location that I applied for, and they gave me a screener call, and the HR director and the director, called me, explained a couple things about this job over a phone call. And this was a 5-minute call, right? And within that 5 minutes, I knew I didn't want the job because it, just wasn't my thing. There was some stuff that they had left out of the job posting. And so there was no up and back and forth. There was no hotel stays. Nobody got reimbursed for anything. Nobody had to spend hours doing a presentation. Nobody had to sit through anything. It was just a 5-minute call. And, why are we not doing more of that? Like we're quick, fail fast, right? So.
You know what? You drew the parallel earlier to the RFP process, and I just thought that was such a good parallel because I recently had an RFP that we responded to, and it was for a rebrand for a destination. And we were selected as a finalist for the RFP. And the question they sent over the day before was, we see that you didn't address your plan for research in the RFP response. Is that something that is included? And we went back and we scoured. We're like, what did we miss here? We scoured the entire RFP. Sure enough, there was nothing about research in that RFP or any of the documentation we had received to that point. And it was just kind of, again, it's like you say, it was a frustrating experience because the criteria that you're trying to respond to isn't clear. And then it's like, well, wait, why didn't you address this criteria? And I want to speak specifically to one of the things that you mentioned you experienced, the 2 hour first meeting. When what if there was something in your experience that disqualified you for the role? What if you don't know if you want to work for that organization yet? I think it's a great example of destinations as a whole need to, just like we need to put ourselves in the place of the visitor, because that's one part of the process that actually there's a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of connection that goes into it. How do we inspire people to come to this destination? We put a ton of thought into that, but putting the same level of thought into how do we inspire someone to come work in this destination or for this organization, the same level of thought clearly didn't go into it in a couple of these experiences that you had. And I would argue that especially knowing that how many people are involved in a hiring decision at a destination, like in an executive director role, where we've probably got the whole board involved, we've probably got a few stakeholders that are not on the board involved, and you're doing a 2 hour presentation when we don't even know if you're the guy, right? And so I think that's I don't know. I think that's a representation that the process is broken, which is what you led with when you suggested we have this conversation. Anything you'd add there?
Yeah, I think it. Well, I mean, especially into the RFP, making sure that you have everything exactly listed, making sure you have all those questions, because I think even at the end, the when I got that email rejection after that whole months long process, the one thing that they dinged me on was something that they never asked me about, and we never discussed. And it seems as though that was a large component of something that they felt that was part of their organization that I didn't know, because I don't work there. I'm not from there, and so there was some things there that I just feel like, make sure you have got all of those details out there, and if there's something specific, make sure you're asking about it. So
Now, there's going to be some skeptics for sure as they listen to
sure.
this, and they're going to say, well, what did Colin say in that last interview that caused them to flip the script or change their mind, right? And so I would want you to at least kind of put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, from their perspective, what may have happened that caused that. Now, before you go too far into that, I will say I'm drawing the parallel to the RFP process. I always ask, hey, are you willing to share with us where we went wrong so that we can improve for the future? And I actually can learn a lot about a destination and the people that work there by how they respond to that question. And so anyway, I'd love to have you address what the skeptics are probably going to ask
Sure.
when they
No,
hear
no,
this
that's a very fair assessment. But I think I always end my interviews with sort of the question of, is there anything that I've said today, or is anything you read that would prevent you from bringing me to the next level, or making sure that I'm your top candidate? So I always allow them time to suggest something I didn't say right, or something I could go back and edit for them. And I think in this process, I asked that question, and literally I was, wow, we've never gotten that question before, and never once asked me about startup experience, which was what they dinged me for. Was the fact that they felt like I didn't have enough startup experience, which I thought was really weird, because that was a great destination and they have some great assets, and I wish them all the success in the whole wide world. And I know they eventually did hire somebody like a year later, and they're fantastic, and I wish them all the best success. But I think again, it boiled down to somebody not knowing that end goal, and not having all the details out there.
You now are in control of a destination, right? You're the executive director of Visit Clearfield County.
I like to think some days I'm in control, but I'm really pretty certain it's my assistant director who's in control. But
Yeah, maybe control was the wrong word, but at least you're the buck stops with you. And I would love to understand, I mean, after going through this process, what is the ideal hiring strategy that you plan to implement, if you haven't already, at Visit Clearfield County?
yeah, I think, well, like I said, it's going to start with a screener call, right? I think it's going to start with kind of reading through that data and reading through some of these places, I think one of the conversations I had with another DMO that I was interviewing with, they told me that they had interviewed like Zoom call, like they had spent hours with these people, over 20 some candidates. And I'm a writer too. So, and I've done some like writing competitions and things like that. And generally speaking, when you're reading somebody's work, you sort of start to know who's got it and who doesn't, right? And I just got to think, like, you guys got to get a little sharper on reading through some of these resumes and figuring out, does this person actually know what they're talking about? And then have that 5-minute screen call. So like me, it would be going through these resumes, making sure they're correct, spending a few 5 minutes with these folks, on a phone call, bringing them in, having a Zoom call or something, and really having a core group that understands the goal of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to fill, and really having an understanding of what the organization lacks, and what it is that we need. And I think the best, fun part about being the executive director here is I know what I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff that I don't know. I don't know hardly anything about elk. I'm about to learn a lot about elk coming this fall. But my assistant director knows all of that. So like she's fantastic at filling in those gaps for my knowledge and so, things like that.
Step one, start with a screener call. Who should be running that screener call? Is that the hiring manager? Is that is that the office manager who's doing the screening as a delegated project? Who should be doing that?
I'd say it's probably two. It's the hiring manager and maybe HR or something if you had that. Just kind of go through those real quick, and maybe that's 10 people or something, right? And then you cull that down to about 3.
But the purpose of that screener call is to just identify. We're not deciding we want to hire this person. This is, do they meet the criteria that we've established for this role, and do they fit our culture? Like those would probably be the 2 things that I want to understand in that screener call, correct?
Yep, correct.
Okay, step 2, after the screener call.
Yeah, step 2, I think it's, then it's pulling those 3-4 people that you've selected and spend a little bit more time with them, right? And I think at that point, it's either some sort of one-on-one or some sort of 2 or 3-on-1. I think you start getting more about 4 and 5 and 6, like that gets rough. Yeah. There's a little too many opinions that are floating around at that point. And obviously this changes, right? Like you were mentioning, if it's an executive director role, you probably are going to have some more outside stakeholders that are in and out of this sort of stuff. But for some of these coordinators or some of these manager roles, my God, why are you spending 8 hours, interviewing, grilling these people, these little coordinators that are straight out of college? They're not ready for that. Like,
well, but so again, step 2, the purpose then is to really get to know the person. You want to understand how they tick, how they think. You want to understand if they have the emotional intelligence, the mental intelligence needed to fulfill the role. And so I would say that deep dive is to really get to know and understand the person clearly. And you can evaluate their preparedness for the position that you're bringing them into, right? Is that a fair kind of description of step 2?
100%. Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment.
Okay. So if someone has made it past step 1, the screener call, and step 2, where you really get to know the motivations and intentions of the person who's interviewing for the role, step 3, in my mind, should only happen with people that you're truly considering to be somebody that can meet the needs of the role and somebody that you might be willing to hire. So what does step 3 look like after you've gone through those first 2 screenings?
Yeah, step 3, I think it could be slightly more, maybe it's taking them out to lunch or something. Maybe it's something a little more, we're in hospitality, right? Like we should be, how do they deal in an environment like that? How do they conduct themselves, in places like that. So I think that's an opportunity to kind of get that real one-on-one, that culture fit, right? Just to double check that, like, you've already, round two, maybe you already saw them do a presentation, or maybe they already answered all the right questions. And but round three should probably just be that culture check. And if it makes all the right checks, get it done.
Yeah, I had a guy one time tell me that the way he decides is would somebody fit his culture is if I was stuck in the airport with them for 3 hours on a layover, would I be miserable or enjoy myself? And I thought that was a kind of a funny way to think about it, because if you use that as your barometer, it actually helps you understand quickly, will this person match our culture or not? Because if you don't want to be stuck in an airport with them, I can tell you don't want to be stuck in an office with them either.
Yeah, and we're in DMOs, and most of us are like offices of 3 or 4. You're going to see this person a lot, and you're going to talk to them a lot. So you better have a good cultural fit. But yeah,
Yeah.
And I think, quite frankly, the cultural fit is probably more important than any of the skills, because I can teach anybody how to market the skills and all that other sort of stuff. It's that culture, it's that mindset, it's that willingness, to be involved, to be open to that hospitality sort of mindset. Those are all the things that are more important to me than somebody who knows how to run an ad on Facebook.
So based on what I'm hearing, step 3 is that kind of like, okay, we're serious about this person, so we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive. We're going to find out if we can work well with them. That might be taking them out to lunch. That's spending a little more time with them, whatever, right? If there's a step 4, it should be targeted follow-up based on unanswered questions from the first three things, or an offer letter. Is that fair to say?
I'd say that's fair. I mean, yeah, if there's still questions after 3, like, I guess ask them, but you should have understood the process earlier on. You should have already had those answers, gotten them. But yeah, if there's any still lingering, absolutely get them done.
So if in the first 3 rounds we didn't get all the information that we need, we as a DMO probably need to adjust our hiring process.
Yep.
Okay. Super helpful. And I think we've at least given I would say a rough framework for destinations to think about that process in very kind of clear steps. I'd love to have you maybe flip it now. And for those that are looking for a new job or are about to go through the hiring process, what would you recommend for those that are looking? What do they need to do to make themselves as marketable as possible?
Well, I think you certainly, there's the whole, run your resume through an AI system, right? And make sure that you're able to be seen, because I think there's so much that there's that barrier. And I think it took me a while, right, of trying to figure out until exactly my resume was kind of tweaked just right, until it all sort of started getting, because once I got it right, there was a minute there where I had interviews over top of interviews over top of interviews. It got a little intense. So I think you make sure you're getting your resume correct, make sure it's polished, and get it so it reads well in those AI systems that are going to auto reject you. But then on top of that, it has to look good for the human who will eventually see it. It can't just be polished through AI. It does have to have that human element. It has to be real, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. We should launch a product that's a resume AI identifier, right? It's right. The HR version of Tennessee Tourism's photo screener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I would just say, make sure you've got, especially once you have the interviews, make sure you've got your good stories. You've got there's pretty, all the questions that they ask on an interview are pretty much the same ones, no matter what job you're going for, right? There may be some specific ones for this thing. And I will tell you, I've worked in marketing now for a symphony. I've worked in, an event coordinator. I've worked for a large Fortune 500 sort of company, and destination marketing. Marketing is marketing. No matter where you go, marketing is marketing. It's the same tools. It's the same levers. If you're getting a marketing job, you should be able to talk to it no matter where you're going, right? Just know some specific locations for the industry that you're specifically trying to market. But other than that, just get it done. So I think just kind of know those kind of things, and have those good answers and have those good stories, and get people to connect with those stories a little emotionally while you're doing those interviews.
I think the stories is really important. Now, what I would be careful of is, it's kind of funny that we're doing this today. My brother's actually looking for a job. He's my twin brother. And right before this recording, he asked me if I had 15 minutes to let him practice the presentation for round 3 that he has for a big corporation today. And so we went through it, and the feedback that I gave him was, you're doing the combination of anticipating all the questions and expounding broadly, and then you're telling the stories, and you're taking 15 minutes per slide, and you really need to be very concise and let the stories be the place where you expound, because that's where people can connect with you. But they'll ask you follow-up questions if your answers were too concise. But what you can't recover from is going beyond what they wanted, and now you've wasted their time for 10 minutes on every single answer to the question. So my suggestion for anybody looking for a job is, in the interview process, give clear, concise, confident responses to the questions, and then let the follow-up questions fill in the blanks from anything you might have missed, because if you miss something, the interviewer will flag it, recognize it, and ask you whatever it is that you missed.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Yeah, get it short and sweet. Like, have that speech within 3 minutes, right? Have all your answers. 3 minutes. That's about what you get.
Yeah, if every slide's a podcast episode, you probably missed somewhere along the way.
Those podcasters, my God, they just go on and on.
I would hate to interview me at this point. That's why I have to own my own business. Okay, so I think to wrap, Colin, it would be really valuable for you just to consolidate what you've learned for both the job seeker and the job provider. What do we need to do? What's next steps for anybody listening to this episode to get it right?
Be fast. I think it's about failing fast, right? It's learning something very quickly, and how fast can you make it? And there's probationary periods for a reason, right? If you get it wrong, well, there's options. I realize I'm coming from perhaps a corporate mentality on some of that. Like, if we made the wrong decision, we will change that decision. But I think it's spend less time on this, because be correct, understand where you're going, and that way you don't get dragged down in the mud with all of this, because this can really jam up an organization for a long time. Hiring and turnover is probably the most expensive thing in any organization. Just the loss of knowledge from somebody leaving, or just the effort of having to find somebody new. So why not make sure you've got the railroad already built, correctly before you try to run the train down it. So
I love that. I think the only thing I would add to that is that I would encourage every destination to think through the candidate experience with just as much rigor as you think through the visitor experience, and you'll definitely find some gaps that need to be fixed, and probably some timelines that need to be shrunk. So
yeah, because sometimes they may end up being the executive director of some county next door to you, and they may be in charge of bringing tourists to your region. You never know. You never know.
You never know. That's funny. Colin, this has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you. You brought a topic today that I think is under-discussed in our space, and I really appreciate you facilitating that with me today. It's been great.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. If people want to learn more about you, what's the best way?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. There's also visit clearfieldcounty.org, which, if you were listening to this episode before August of 2026, please do not go to that website until it is done in August of 2026. So
I love it. Well, Colin, this is fantastic. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. It helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Colin. Thanks everybody, and have a great week. Ever since we did CMO Jam at Esto last year, my inbox has been full of people saying, okay, when's the next one? When's the next one? When are you going to do the CEO Jam? When are you going to do Digital Marketer Jam? So on and so forth. And it's something that we've put a lot of thought into. And after seeing the success of the CMO Jam product last year, we wanted to make it more frequent. We wanted to make it more scalable. And we've been working on a solution to that. Right now, I'm looking for CMOs who want to participate in the CMO Jam that's upcoming, probably in the next couple of months. And I'm also looking for people who would like to be a part of additional roundtables. So CMO Jam was where I had 10 CMOs around a table, and we talked about the issues facing our industry and how the destination marketing industry can move forward from a marketing perspective. If you're a CEO and would like to be part of a CEO roundtable, hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com. Same if you're a CMO, or if you're part of another group that you'd like to do a roundtable sitting around with your different peers and have me moderate a discussion that captures really good value for the entire industry, something that everybody in the industry needs to hear. I really would love to have all of you participate in some of these roundtables that we're putting together, and I'm even working on something that's going to be more fun, bigger, and more opportunity for you all to connect with your peers in these types of roundtable settings. We're all going to learn from each other. It's the only way we survive this thing, is we all need to work together, help each other move forward, and build for the future, build an industry that's sustainable for the future. And there's too much one-to-many discussion going on. I want many-to-many discussion going on. And the way to do that is through these roundtables. If you want to participate, hit me up, adam@thebrandrevolt.com. We'll set up a roundtable. We'll get you involved in some of the ones that we already have planned. And I think it's going to be a great way for us to continue to push this industry forward.